two aspects of this motion before it goes to discussion. Number one, intentional homelessness, and number two, the social care duties and our moral duty to act. Intentional homelessness is not a black and white status. It's a subjective value judgment, the interpretation of which becomes less and less in the spirit of the law each day the housing crisis deepens. It includes battered women at risk of harm, but not quite at risk of harm, but not deemed quite at risk of harm enough to have fled their homes. It includes people living in desperate poverty, but then not quite desperate enough to have fallen into arrears. It includes people whose knowledge of the intricacies of the housing law was too limited to prevent them from leaving their homes prematurely due to intimidation from their landlord. In such cases, the Children Act protects these children from street homelessness. They have a duty to provide housing. However, in cases where families have been placed in temporary accommodation outside the borough, Thurrock Children's Services refuse to act. Instead, these families may get a call from the homeless team, often minutes before they remove the temporary accommodation they have provided. They signpost to the borough that these families have been placed, who are often extremely resistant to provide support, to boroughs who have no obligation to protect the community fabric of Thurrock, whose approach to homeless families may be below the standards we should set ourselves in Thurrock, and whose standard of service we have no control over. It is my view that these children are part of the Thurrock family, and as such we have a moral duty not to abandon them. This is not a game that pass the parcel. Failure to maintain the stability and continuity of young lives has serious consequences, both social and medical. I therefore ask all members to consider the merits of this motion carefully. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Spillman. Is that motion seconded?
I'll second that motion.
Thank you, Councillor Duffin. Do you want to speak now or reserve your right to speak?
I'll reserve my right.
Thank you. Now open it to debate. Is anybody, Councillor Halden? I've got Councillor Halden down first, unless you want to defer to Councillor Ambrose.
As a portfolio holder for Children's Services, I'd like to speak. And sadly, Luke, I won't be supporting from the Children's Services point of view of this motion. Several reasons. If a child is moved to another authority, immediately that authority will do the case studies on that child and support that child or children. And if we already have knowledge of those children and already a plan, that plan will go with that child. Right? So that is, so we don't need to involve that. If we took on the work and carried on doing the plans of social services for that child when that child is in another borough, that would cost the council absolute fortunes, as well as, yes it would, as well as casework people and social workers who'd be going to and fro to different places to actually see these children. These children then would move on to the other borough and they would continue to support them. It's not a statutory duty of Thurrock to do that if they are not in our borough. We support other children that come from other boroughs into us. Now, what I suggest is you haven't actually spoken to me about this before this motion went in. And I am the portfolio holder for Children's Services, and I'd be more than willing to chat to you about these cases. But I also want to perhaps highlight to you the reason why Children's Services act in this way. It was because of the sad cases of, several years ago when children actually slip through the system. And this is the best way to support the system, without naming names of the child in question, and why this was put forward. We always do the plans for the child that's in the borough, and the borough responsible for that, where that child is living will do the plans. And that is so important, taking out the housing issues. Okay? And I can discuss that with you whenever you like. But that's a really important thing, and please, support that, because, cases could slip through and it would be, put children at risk. Thank you.
Before I call the next person, please be aware that this is quite sensitive. We can't make any reference to any known cases, whether current or previous. If you do, I will have to stop you. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I'm replying as portfolio holder for education. I've got a great deal of sympathy with Councillor Spillman's motion, and it's certainly a motion that's worthy of a full council debate. Councillor Spillman knows that I see schooling as paramount, and every child should be in school. And regardless of what happens with their parents and their housing situation, we've got an obligation to make sure that the child is in school. What Councillor Spillman is seeking is to ensure that young people don't fall through a net. So if someone presents themselves as homeless in that foyer, and we don't have somewhere to put them that night, and we're not sure if they're intentionally homeless or unintentionally homeless, we put them in temporary accommodation, perhaps in Thurrock, perhaps elsewhere. If we put them elsewhere, and then we discover that they are what we deem as intentionally homeless, that's when the formal link to Thurrock is severed, and they become a citizen of that new host borough. What Councillor Spillman is after is making sure that young people don't fall through the net. That is an entirely legitimate argument, and he's right to bring it forward for debate. And the reality is, for the best will in the world, Councillor Little's social care team is excellent. Sometimes mistakes happen, and that is why it's entirely right that we have this debate now and highlight these concerns. The reason I can't support the motion is because the Children's Act is there for one very specific thing, to make sure that local authorities don't cut across each other. What you're after is a guarantee through this motion that if we place a child elsewhere, that they still have that, a family elsewhere, they still have the right to be seen by Thurrock Social Services because you deem them as our citizens. I understand that point of view. However, what that would do in practice is that we could put a child in Barking, they become a citizen of Barking, start to go to school in Barking, but they remain under Thurrock's Children's Services. And that would mean that 2 local authorities at least would be providing oversight. The scope of mistakes then being made, the mistakes of blurred authority, in my view, is tremendous. Obviously, if they have a child protection plan before they leave Thurrock, they always remain on our books. And that is the safety net. So I think your motion is right, it is worthy of debate. Clearly there is an argument for looking at how social care, education and housing can look at one holistic response to make sure we don't lose families, and if we do move families, we are chasing the new local authority to give ourselves the peace of mind that that child is protected. But to have local authorities cut across each other on the child protection issue specifically, it risks there being too many cooks in the kitchen, in my opinion. I did discuss this issue with Councillor Spillman, and to show how seriously the administration takes this issue, within 12 hours of your motion being published, we spoke on the phone. Within 48 hours, you met with me and senior officers, and you're more than welcome, as we've already offered, to meet myself, Councillor Little, and senior officers after this to discuss the individual case you're concerned about, and to make sure that that safety net is there for all children in Thurrock and all children temporarily not in Thurrock.
Thank you. Councillor Okunade.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. In terms of social care activities, I feel I should say something as I'm the chair of the Student Services Provision Scrutiny, and also I'm involved with the Corporate Parenting Committee. I can understand the rationale behind this motion submitted by Councillor Spillman. No one wishes any child to suffer at home or away from home being taught. But I think we can be somehow assured that local authorities have statutory duties for children living in their borough. I'm aware that Thurrock is also responsible to process social care assessment and offer services to children placed in our borough by other local authorities. I don't think it is financially wise anyway to duplicate assessment work, which is the responsibility of other local authority where the child resides. But we should be able to do more about the issue of intentionally homeless, how we help families so that they don't reach that stage of being classified as intentionally homeless. So, I mean, for the reason that we can be sort of assured that authorities have duty to protect, to safeguard children within their own borough. So that is why I'm unable to support this motion. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Getty.
Thank you, Mr Mayor, and I thank Councillor Spilman for his motion. I agree 100%. The intentional homeless statement. Let's not think it's just about people that haven't paid their rent or acted badly as tenants. It's not. This is about people that are vulnerable, and it's a terrible thing to have to say, just not vulnerable enough. And I think that definitely needs to be changed. This is a motion from the heart. Unfortunately, this is one of those where the head has got to rule. There is a reason this statutory duty is in place, and I will name names because I can. The lambing reports over the tragic death of Victoria Columbier made very clear that the social services in the place which the child is residing is the best people to be able to supply that service to them. I fully understand why you want that connection left with Thurrock. It really is a heartfelt thing. I think the problem which we should really be looking at is not where the social workers are, is actually getting rid of these archaic and somewhat bizarre rules on people that are intentional and unintentional. Let's be very clear. People that should be intentional without their own fault, not because they don't quite meet the criteria that's been set by government or some bizarre court ruling many years ago. If we did implement this, which unfortunately I can't support the motion, but if it was to be implemented by some way, my concern would be duplication at best, and at worst, the preventable death of a child. So with the idea that a child might be killed because of them slipping through the net, sorry, I just can't take that risk. But please come and see me, and let's see how we can work, not just with UKIP and Conservatives, just look UKIP, Labour and Conservative to see how we can get this intentionally homeless statements rejigged nationally to make them realistic and not, as they are, somewhat archaic. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Cherry.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I think Councillor Spilman was saying that our authority should accept a non-statutory duty, which I think is suggesting that we don't lose interest in the child as soon as we wash our hands of it, goes to another area. I understand it will go with many reports, etc. But as corporate parents, we should have a continuing interest in that child and its development. Because it is the child itself is not intentionally homeless. It's pretty down to its parent. And we have an interest as a corporate parent. He'll also have grandparents and other family members still living in Thurrock. And they'll want to know that the child that's been sent to perhaps Wolverhampton is being properly represented and looked after. And that we haven't washed our hands of our responsibility. And eventually we would like to have that child come back to us in Thurrock. You know, to create a situation where it can be returned to its area that it knows, where its grandparents are, where its family and friends are. So this, where we're talking about a child slipping through the net, I think this makes the net a lot finer. We're not talking about interfering with what the other social services will be doing, but we will be taking an active interest to make sure they're doing their things right. So that net will be finer for it. So I will support this motion for that reason.
Thank you. Councillor Duffy.
Thank you very much. It was interesting to note on a very moral issue, and there's not too many of you actually get in this chamber, that both the First Conservative and Labour speaker jumped straight to the financial impact. And as Councillor Cherry said, this thing shouldn't be about finances. It should be about looking for the best care for the children, both inside the borough and out. And the finer the net and the more detail and more security for these children, the better. So I'll be supporting this motion, and I'd encourage every member in this chamber to think for the children and not just for their pockets.
Thank you. Councillor Spilman, do you want to sum up?
Statutory duty is there to obviously protect the rights under statute of everyone, every individual in this country. However, at the same time, statutory duty is one of the coldest two-word combinations in the English language. It has no compassion, no sentiment and no discretion. Officers are paid largely to meet statutory duties. Members are elected and given the opportunity to provide ethical leadership. This is one of those situations where we can offer such ethical leadership. The families this motion is designed to protect, almost all of them have one thing in common, Make no mistake, this type of displacement is one of the many faces of social cleansing within Thurrock. We can only protect this community if we do everything we can to keep it together. These families have found themselves placed outside the borough due to a policy failure. The failure to adequately house our own homeless residents. Let's show that corporate parenting is more than just a flashy corporate soundbite. Let's choose not to abandon these children, and let's vote for this motion. Thank you very much.
Thank you, members. I'll now move this to vote. All those voting in favour of the motion, please raise your hands. Thank you. All those against the motion, please raise your hands.